Hi everyone, and welcome to our tutorial on how to make homemade pizza dough for this month's virtual cooking workshop with the Guelph Community Health Center. To get started, we're going to take a look at the ingredients we need to make this recipe. For one batch of pizza dough, we need 1 cup of warm water, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 8-gram package of active dry yeast, 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And for the yeast, it can be any kind of active dry yeast that you find at the grocery store. So the first step in our recipe is to do what's called bloom the yeast. And what this is giving our yeast a bit of a head start on the fermentation process for this dough. So open up your package of active dry yeast and add it to your warm water and add in the sugar and then give it a good stir. And you can see that it takes a little bit to get it well incorporated. But once you've got it all stirred up, you can set it aside while you measure out the rest of your ingredients. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, you'll see some bubbles start to form on the surface, and it might even get a little bit foamy. And that's how you know that the yeast is active and ready to add to the rest of the ingredients for the dough. And I'll just show you here what mine looked like after about 10 minutes. Okay, so now that our yeast is ready, we can add the rest of our ingredients to our mixing bowl. So 3 cups of flour and the salt, and then our olive oil, and finally our yeast, water, and sugar mixture goes in. Okay, so the next step is to mix. And you can just use your hand for this, but if you want, you can use, say, like a wooden spoon. And just use your hand to scrape around the bowl and mix all the ingredients together until it starts to become more cohesive. But at this point, the dough is going to look pretty loose. And this takes a couple of minutes. But once it starts to come together, you can scrape down the sides of the bowl and turn everything out onto your counter or whatever surface you're going to use to knead the dough. So once you've got everything out of your bowl, you can, just using your hands, kind of just try to make all the little pieces combine with your ball of dough. And the dough at this point is going to feel pretty wet, so that's why it's a good idea to have a little bit of extra flour on hand that you can use to sprinkle onto your counter, and this will just help when you're kneading to prevent the dough from sticking to your counter. So any little bits that you have, you can just combine them with the ball of dough. Don't worry about things being a little dry when you add them in. It's all going to get incorporated when you knead. So you can see I'm starting to knead the dough here using both of my hands, and I'm pushing out with my palm and then folding the dough back towards myself. And every time I fold the dough back towards myself, I'm also giving my ball of dough a slight rotation, so just a little bit of a turn as well. So pushing out, folding it back, and turning it. And you can use one hand and then the other hand, or both your hands, whatever you find works. We're going to be kneading the dough for about 10 minutes, so you'll find that you get into a little bit of a rhythm over time. So I'm alternating my hands. Right hand, left hand, pushing it out, giving it a turn, pushing it out, giving it a turn. And if you ever find that your ball of dough is getting stuck to the counter, just lift it up and sprinkle a little bit of extra flour under there. It doesn't have to be a lot. And I'm just going to speed the process up here so you can see. Again, in total, we're going to knead the dough for about 10 minutes. Okay, so we are halfway through here. So you can see the dough is pretty smooth, but there's still some dimpling on the surface. And you might think you're done at this point, but keep going, 5 more minutes. And after 10 minutes of kneading, we have a smooth dough that we can shape into a nice ball by rotating and tucking our pinkies underneath as we rotate to create some surface tension across the dough. The final step is to allow this dough to rise. So put it back in your mixing bowl with some oil so that it doesn't stick, and cover it with plastic wrap. If you're making this dough the day of the workshop, make sure to have enough time to allow the dough to rise for about an hour before the workshop gets started. And if you're making this dough the day before, you can go ahead and throw it right into the fridge now, and just make sure to take it out of the fridge at least 1 full hour before the workshop starts so that it can come back to room temperature.